continue with the same book. My name is Book, an autobiography. Today, I'm going to start a new chapter. Down the Alphabet Road. Picture writing techniques lived on in the ancient Egyptian system of writing. This was called hieroglyphics, a strange word that means sacred writing, because it was mainly priests who had access to this holy database. There were over 2,000 hieroglyphic characters, so it's no wonder that they were surrounded in mystery. And that took archaeologists years to figure them all. But in the land of pharaohs, there also lived another people called Phoenicians. Some of them were soldiers in the Egyptian army. Some were miners looking for turquoise under the desert. Phoenicians borrowed symbols from Egyptian hieroglyphic, but made a big leap forward towards the alphabets as we know it today. Whereas the Egyptians used pictures to stand for things and ideas. The Phoenicians used pictures to stand for the actual sound of spoken language. Those Phoenicians were onto something that would send ripples across time and space. And that something was the alphabet. The ABC to me and you. The alphabet meant people wouldn't have to remember all the thousands of the symbols used in hieroglyphics, and more people would have a chance of learning to read and write. Soon the alphabet was sailing the Mediterranean Sea, for the Phoenicians were great sailors and traders, and part of their cargo was newly discovered export, the ABC. That's why I, the book, would like to salute the Phoenicians, not just for their beautiful purple dye they exported, known as Phoenician purple, but also for phonetics, which is a study of sounds of human speech. This is how the Egyptians used. Of course, you know your ABC, said the Red Queen. To be sure, I do, said Alice. So do I, the White Queen whispered. We will often say it over together, dear. And I will tell you a secret. I can read words of one letter. Isn't it grand? However, don't be discouraged. You will come to it in time. Tweaking the ABC. And so, the ABC took off. Soon the ancient Greeks were coming up with their own alphabet of 22 letters. Alpha, beta, gamma, all the way down to omega. No prizes for guessing where the word alphabet comes from. The Greek also added their own vowel letters, since the Phoenicians' language only had consonants. Enter A, E, I, O, U. It must have been fun being a little letter in those days, with different people taking you and shaping you to their own language, straightening you here, curving you there, as they saw fit, even writing you in all directions, right to left, left to right, not to mention downwards and upwards. A page must have felt like a trampoline. And that's just what different ancient people, the Greeks, the Etruscan, and the Romans did with letters. They tweaked them to suit their language. Now, when you write in English, you are using letters inherited from the Romans. But don't forget that those letters are the great grandchildren of Phoenician's alphabet. Once I get started on the subject of alphabets, I could go on and on forever. So, let me ask you something instead. Do you like myths? Do you like brain teasers? Well, try this. What do the Egyptians god Thoth, the Greek god Hermes, the Norse god Odin, and the Irish god Ogma have in common? They all invented some form of alphabets. For the Sumerians, it was their goddess Nisaba who passed on the gift of ancient cuneiform writing. In India, the goddess Saraswati brought the Hindus the alphabet, and in her heart there is a special place for book. During her festival, I always find myself next to prayer beads and white lotus flower before her altar, and on this day young children write their first letter, the first letter of Sanskrit alphabet, Om. To rock, my rock to roll days. To see me sitting quietly on this shelf, waiting for someone to come along and browse through my pages? You would never think I had a rock and rolling past, would you? Let me make myself clear. I say rock because whenever I see drawings done on the walls of caves by human hands more than 30,000 years ago, I feel as if I'm gazing into rock illustrations of an ancient part of myself. As for rolling, oh, you should have seen me in my rolling days. By then, I was made of papyrus, a kind of paper, and wrapped around rolling rods. You might have thought book was a roller blind or a roll of wallpaper. You would hold me in one hand and with the other you would be rolling me in order to read me. Sometimes, if I was many meter long, you would even have to lay me on the floor and roll me along as you read. I did some rolling in my time. I can tell you, I rolled in Europe until the Middle Ages. I rolled for longer in Islamic world where my letters were embossed in gold. And during that time, I met rolls that had traveled I met rolls that had traveled all the way from Asia. I guessed this from their picture like Chinese writing, and I later learned they were sacred Buddhist texts made of birch bark that had to be unrolled just like me. I didn't have a spine yet. I would lie spineless in my pigeonhole, my title on a little wooden tag, and I would be rolled up. And stored in a container like a big fat tube. What was the reason for all this rolling? Simple. I had no pages to flip. And that time, book took the form of scrolls. So to be precise, I should have said my rolling days. But rolling days will do nicely. You can't take the rolls out of scrolls, can you? As a matter of fact, in these high-tech times, when you read me on your electronic screen, you are back to scroll and roll. Scrolling and rolling. So you are back to downwards and upwards as you read. Funny old world, isn't it? My papyrus adventure. Now let me tell you a bit more about papyrus. Thanks to that reedy plant growing in the swamps by the river Nile, I shed my old skin of clay and took on a new look and feel. You could call me papyrus period. The Egyptians, you see, had found that by joining together flattened stalks of papyrus plant, they could make a sort of paper to write on. And they got very good value out of papyrus. I can tell you, they drank it, they ate it, they wore it, even sailed in it. And then they wrote on it. Soon everyone who wrote used papyrus for writing on, and I was scrolling myself across many Mediterranean lands. The Greeks called papyrus byblos because they imported it from a city port called Byblos. And that's why someone who can't resist the temptation of bookshop is called bibliophile, or even in extreme cases, bibliomaniac. The one problem with papyrus was that it couldn't be folded like today's paper. So though I looked beautiful, I was easily breakable. I was almost as brittle as dead leaves. And if it hadn't been for the dry climate of Egypt, I wouldn't have survived. But survive I did. And I must say, I had something exciting. Papyrus adventures. My favorite was when I was sealed in earth jars to accompany the dead on their journey to underworld. Honestly, I, the book, have lain beside mummies and Egyptian tombs, and trust me, you couldn't ask for better traveling companion to the underworld than a mummy. No wonder some people think that undertakers might have been the first book dealers. And by the way, did you know that the word paper comes from the word papyrus? Just thought I would mention it. So, bye for now. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. We are going to continue tomorrow. Hope you're enjoying the story My name is Book, an autobiography. Bye. Stay safe.